How's my posture?
Posture looks great, man. I was just about to say, real level up since last time.
It's straight line.
Yeah, it's straight diagonal line.
Fucking Stephen Lubka here. I have to sit up like this, Danny. All right.
Me coming on, it's good for you.
How am I now? I don't even know. It's one of those ones, right? Like, I think my posture's okay, and then the film will come out and someone will do the line, and you'll be like perfect, and I'll still be all crooked and shit.
I've got pretty bad posture, I think.
We've got the green line crew.
Sit up, man. Come on. We got Stephen Lubka in the house.
What did posture do?
What posture did?
What posture did?
Yeah. Gave me fucking sciatica. That's what it did. Stephen, good to see you, man.
It's great to see you. It's been about a year. It's great to see you again.
That's weird. I wouldn't have thought that. If you'd have said, when did we last see you? It was a year ago, but I wouldn't have thought that, man.
Yeah, time flies.
Yeah.
Especially in this industry.
Yeah. Woo.
I mean, my God.
It's been an interesting week.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I was going to ask you, actually. So it looks like Craig is going up in flames.
Well,
how do you feel?
I mean, we
don't know yet.
Yeah, so I'm still in active litigation.
Sure.
So he won the lawsuit, but got a £1 judgment based on his evidence.
£1 too high, if you ask me.
Well, I think I wonder if that's the minimum they can do. But and then, but no, he won the litigation. I libeled him, and under UK law, the things I said were libelous. And then he appealed the £1 judgment.
Okay.
He lost that. And so he has one more appeal left to the Supreme Court, which they've submitted. We're waiting to hear whether it will be granted right of appeal. Obviously, there are questions in the air. Even if he is granted, what will happen now? It's been an interesting week. There's obviously limitations about what I can say because it's active litigation. And I don't want to end up in new litigation. But it's definitely been an interesting week, and I think it's going to be an interesting few weeks, and we'll see how it all plays out. Am I being too cagey here?
No, I think that's fair. I think you should be careful.
Yeah, no, I want to be careful because the last 5 years have been horrendous.
A nightmare for you, I know.
Danny was there at the worst times when I was facing a defeat in court where I would have lost everything. This podcast would have gone. My house would have gone. I did end up in hospital with a major panic attack twice, actually. It was fucking horrendous. But at the same time, it does feel like it's coming to a close in one way or another. And hopefully for Hodler 02, who's been put through equal hell, and some developers who are also facing a difficult situation. So hopefully this will all come to an end for everyone soon, and we'll be able to talk about it a bit more. But it's definitely been an interesting week.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate, I mean, you know, in the situation, the risk of saying something is far too high. But, you know, for me, who's not in those situations, you know, it does, it feels like a notable milestone in the story of Craig.
Yeah. Can I tell you something interesting?
Yeah, please.
Despite everything, I'm fascinated by him. Like fascinated, because when you're so close, when you're involved in the litigation, you become very close to the story, but you weirdly become, there's like a bond that builds with that person because they're thinking about you, you're thinking about them, you face off against them in court. And I'm utterly fascinated by him as a person. So, and that's outside of
what is the biggest question? Like, what is the thing you're most fascinated by about him?
That I can't answer because of active litigation. But I'm fascinated by just characters and like whatever you think whatever you think about him. He, as a character story, he's fascinating.
Absolutely.
Because he's so complex. There's so much to him. And like some people would just immediately dismiss this and just dismiss him. But if this was a film or a Netflix series,
there's going to be a film.
Of course, there'll be a film or a Netflix series. It will be compelling viewing because there are so many questions that you have. I mean, I'll tell you some of them off camera, what the questions I have. So I'm utterly compelled to find out more about him. Like the journalist in me,
Yeah.
once this is done, I actually want to sit down with him. Honestly, as mad as this sounds, I could actually sit down with him, have a glass of wine and say, listen, we are where we are. You've caused me a lot of shit, but I've got questions for you. I want to ask you questions. I'd interview Calvin Ayre.
I would love to see that episode. That would be a phenomenal. I mean, that would be incredible.
There is a Netflix documentary. Can you look up an American murder? What is it? A traditional American murder or something? It's a story of this
American Murder, The Family Next Door.
Something like that. If you get it up, yeah. Let me just see on Danny's thing. Yeah, that's okay. So it's a story. I can't remember his name. Has it got his name there?
No, it's the disappearance of Shannon Watts. It says.
Yeah. So this lady goes missing with her kids, and the husband is immediately suspected.
Yeah.
And he turns out he'd been having an affair with this lady, and then his wife got pregnant. They already had 2 kids, and then they disappeared. And it turned out he murdered her and the 2 kids in the most horrific way.
Yeah.
Like absolutely horrific. And so they go through the trial, and he ends he denies it. Then he enters a plea deal to avoid execution, admits everything, and in the court, members of the family have a chance to speak. And one of them, I don't know if it's the nan or an aunt or a neighbor, somebody gets up and says, we forgive you.
Yeah.
And when you see that, you're like, hold on, how do you forgive that? But a lack of forgiveness traps you.
Sure.
Really traps you. It makes, and, in the end, like I'm quite a forgiving person. Like I would forgive Craig, I'd forgive Calvin, because like, what's the point in holding a grudge?
It benefits you nothing. It just costs you your own peace of mind, your own internal experience. Like there's no benefit you derive from that resentment or anger or whatever you want to call it.
There's nothing to it. So like, I already kind of forgive him, and I just don't care. It's happened. We went through a tough time. It was horrific. Now it's done. I'm just more interested in the story. I would love to sit across from him and have a conversation. I'd love to tell him what I went through. I'd love to hear from him. I just think it would be compelling viewing.
It's humans bond, through hardship in such an interesting way, even with our opponents in those hardships. It's like what you're saying. It's like we all know, like, people that go through a shared struggle together, it can form long-lasting bonds. But what you're saying, and it makes sense to me, is like we can even have some sort of bond with these figures that like are opposing us in that circumstance. And like it sounds like paradoxical on the surface, but it makes a lot of sense to me. It's like using the word kind of like, not like broadly, it's like you almost have like an intimacy with that person. It's a weird intimacy. It's a conflicted intimacy, but like you said, like that's somebody you're thinking about. You're thinking about each other. That takes up a lot of space in your life, maybe more space than maybe casual friends or other people that you have maybe a more positive relationship with. But like, just what a weight, what a presence.
Yeah. You asked me what the questions I want to ask. They're probably the same ones that you would, if you sat down and watched it, if you thought, actually, I need to watch this, it's probably the same questions you have. We'll talk about that off screen.
You want to know how many steps he walks a day?
Yeah. Do you know what, though? In some ways, I actually despise the lawyers more. I know that sounds weird, but the strategy they've taken and the tactics they took were rough to go through. And again, I can't talk about too much, but I have there's not like a weird, like I have to forgive you. I forget about these people, but I despise the whole legal industry or that part of it for it. But anyway, listen.
Yeah.
When this is all done, I'm sure if someone wants to, I'll do an interview on it. I'll tell the whole story because it's crazy. But anyway, man, LA, Pacific Bitcoin round 2.
Round 2,
We're
second
back.
year.
Yeah.
Here we are again. We pulled it off and we're back.
Yeah, no, excited. Really enjoyed it last year. I thought you guys did a great job. A lot of conferences are very similar, but Team Swan, Corey pulled it off. It was great. You must be pumped.
I'm super excited. I mean, it was one of the, like, I don't say any of this like, I know I'm a Swan guy. I'm here, but I don't say any of this to promote Swan. I just had such a good time. Like, I legitimately enjoyed the last year so much. I'm pumped for this one. For me personally, like, Swan's grown so much. Like, where the company is 3 times the size in terms of headcount. Like, there's so many people I've never met. Like, we're a remote only company, and it's like crazy. Like, work with people for a year and you'll never meet them in person. And so this is our, like, I'm excited to see a lot of these people and like put a face to the Slack handle.
Well, we had that, didn't we?
Yeah.
How
for
long?
sure. I reckon it was probably 2.5 years, something, until we met.
No,
Yeah.
really?
Yeah. Because it was was it COVID?
No, it was before COVID, but
Because
I
you
was obviously in
originally
Australia.
didn't film in person.
Oh, yeah, that was it.
Okay.
So I would often come out here to LA. Actually, actually, no, I'd remember because of the time zones.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I would record. I would send Danny the audio, and he would do it. And then COVID, we added video, didn't we?
Yeah, because it was just so easy when you can just do it online.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we're like, shit, now we've got to do it when we're in person.
Yeah, that was the thing, and we met in New York for the first time. It was like that moment. I don't know if you ever watched Friends when like Joey and Chandler like hadn't seen each other for ages. They're like this. Me and Danny were just like all excited. We got absolutely battered.
Yeah.
It's a cool experience.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a unique one, right? Like, I wonder how many comparable experiences there are, like prior to remote work, like there just wasn't really this sort of same experience, because maybe you were part of a company and someone worked in Europe and you worked in the United States, but you probably didn't collaborate that much. And I don't know, it's interesting. It's
It's like meeting a pen pal.
It's like meeting exactly.
Pen pals.
You guys are pen pals.
Sitting up so straight, I've got to change your camera.
I don't know how you do it. Like I keep thinking of it, and then I just kind of like slink back into curved. I keep having to remind myself, but you obviously have this natural
Functional
posture.
range conditioning, Peter.
Oh man,
I've tried to pill you on this actually for years. You don't even know it because you didn't know me the first time I tried to do it. I was in your comments. I was a reply guy.
Danny says don't read the comments.
Yeah.
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 I was it's this
For the toxic posture maximalist.
I mean, but also like it's Bitcoin itself is weird. Maybe we just think we're different, but I wonder what other industries there are where people all around the world are working on kind of an ideological common goal
yeah.
that feels like it's the most important thing in the world that we can do, that it will fundamentally change the future for billions of people. And wherever you go, you can kind of get on with most people. You either get on with them and understand them, or that you're mortal enemies.
Yeah.
I don't know if you have mortal enemies. I have a few, but but like I said, I could not see you for a year.
Yeah.
And it's probably like the third time we've hung out.
Yeah.
But I feel like I know you're like a good friend.
Yeah.
And if we went out for dinner afterwards, we'd have a great night. And I could not see you again for a year. And you can message me and say, I'm in London. I'll be like straight down there. I don't know if there are other industries like that. When I worked in advertising, I don't think I would go to Australia and go to an advertising conference and feel like, oh, we're all on the same page. Well, we probably were. Probably all doing coke in the toilets. but I wouldn't feel like you're all on the same page. And then, and you'd just go into the conference. I don't know if there's other things like this.
I don't, if they are, they're far and few between. I've worked in other industries too. I ran a software firm for a little bit. I have many friends that don't work in Bitcoin, and I've never seen anything like this. And it's one of the things that most jumps out to me. Like, I've been in Bitcoin since 2017. And I think for most people, you spend the first couple years wrapping your head around the technology and some of the common questions and the incentives and how it works. But at this stage of my Bitcoin process, the thing that is most fascinating to me about Bitcoin, and the thing that draws my attention the most, is actually the community. I'm actually incredibly fascinated, impressed by, moved by the community of Bitcoiners. And I think there are some really unique traits. And I'm somebody that also I know some crypto people, and I've even seen that world, and I have friends that work in it.
Some of my best friends are crypto people.
Yeah, I've been known to have a few friends, but it's a different vibe, and it's not just that like they like crypto and we like Bitcoin. There are Bitcoiners are much more likely to be kind of generalists, I think, or to have multiple interests. And this is something that really jumped out at me. And like, I'm fairly well known at this point on Twitter for being the sunlight and walking guy. And when I started kind of tweeting about that, at first I kind of expected that like people were going to be like, shut up, Steven. I followed you to hear you talk about Bitcoin. What the heck are you doing? But I actually got like totally the opposite response. And a lot of Bitcoiners were not just really interested, but shared that they actually had already had some of those shared interests. And this was something they were passionate about in their personal lives. And just as a result of that and more conversations with people, like I've just seen that like the number of interests and other kind of fields and inquiries that Bitcoiners go really deep in is incredibly broad. And I think we live in a world that is so hyper specialized to fault, to like extraordinary detriment, that I love seeing that. I love that Bitcoin has somehow attracted all of these people.
It keeps dragging. It's the flashing.
I'm gonna turn that
It
on.
keeps drawing you in. We were doing an interview yesterday. And anyone listening, we've got a block clock on the table. Big shout out MVK. And every time the price changes, it like flashes. Yeah. But when we were doing this interview yesterday, as we were about to sit down, it shot up that $600. And so every time I looked, I was like, "Are we up more? Are we up more?" The PAC Bitcoin pump.
Last year, we held this conference, and it was literally as FTX was collapsing. I remember being on the phone with clients, with all of the, like for people that don't know me, I run the private client team for Swan. We're hosting Pacific Bitcoin. FTX is failing. Bitcoin's like literally ticking 16K. And I'm outside the hotel, just like taking calls, doing all this stuff. It was still an amazing time. I mean, it's so funny. At the conference, it was like no one was even talking about the price.
No one cared.
No one cared.
Yeah.
We just had a great time. But I have to say, I'm very excited that the price is pumping this time. I think we've earned it.
We have definitely earned it. It's been an interesting year. But just back to what you were saying though, because you were talking about the crypto people. I know plenty of crypto people. And I'm also at the moment really compelled by BitBoy. I don't find him compelling viewing. My first interview was with Luke Martin. He's a shitcoin trader. And I'm not going to not be friends with people because they trade crypto. I don't care.
Yeah, sure.
But I don't feel like there is a united ideological mission.
No, exactly.
And so really, to me, it's kind of like hyper fiat world. Really, what they're doing is they're essentially creating these tokens and hyping the value and dumping and having a part. And look, they're having fun.
Yeah.
My view is like we as Bitcoin people. It's I say it's like we're in Vegas in a glass office having a presentation from a PowerPoint, and through the glass windows we can see all the crypto people gambling and drinking and having fun. That's the world. Like they're having a lot of fun. But what I will say about the crypto people, they're fucking generous. I mean, I've seen some fundraisers that are insane. Like really good projects, really good fundraising. I found fundraising for important projects in Bitcoin hard. Yeah, really hard. Yeah, people are generous, but it's still hard.
Yeah.
This. I don't know if you saw this thing when I was in Beirut to light the street.
Yes, I did.
Okay, raised $2,500. Amazing. I've got no doubt if I was a shitcoiner, I could have raised $2.5 million. Yeah, it would have flown in. But that's because Bitcoiners stack and hold onto their sats, and
There's also more. I mean, there's also more. Not to diminish that, because I'm not trying to. They donated that money, and they donate that money, and it costs them as many dollars as it would cost you or me, and they deserve credit for that. But I think it is also worth noting like the sheer amount of VC dollars that goes through that industry. Yeah. I mean, it dwarfs Bitcoin by maybe 2 orders of magnitude. So there is just more money flowing through that, at least historically.
Yeah, I would have thought it'd be even more than 2 orders.
It could be.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't have any figures
Maybe,
to cite, but
maybe not next time. I wonder if it's kind of like, I do wonder if it's kind of over.
I think it's gonna. I don't know if it's over or not. I'm not willing to bet on that, but I do think that the gap narrows. I do think like if in 21 or like the best performing major cryptocurrency like Solana outperformed Bitcoin by what like 1,000, 10,000, whatever it is, whatever that number is. I think if it does happen again, that number will be much smaller. I think Bitcoin will do much better relative to crypto for a few. I mean, I think for a few angles too is like not just that I think the industry has changed and like there's just been so many black eyes on that side, but I also think that, and this is not me coming out in support of this. Let me be clear. But I do think there's a lot of new like ordinals and the tokens and these other things. Like I think some of that speculative money will come speculate on Bitcoin because now you can speculate on Bitcoin.
Yeah.
And don't want to get into whether that's good or bad or that whole conversation. But I think that does also narrow the gap. There's less dollars flowing to crypto land and there's more dollars flowing to Bitcoin adjacent stuff.
Yeah, so much of that crap has failed. Oh, what's the WorldCoin price now? That'd be an interesting one. I mean, because that was the last big launch that I remember, and I'm assuming the price is just tanked. Is it even on CoinMarketCap?
It went down. It broke through. They had kind of a market maker contract, I heard, to keep it above a certain price. This is speculation, but it's what I heard, and I think it broke below that.
Is that even it?
WorldCoin.
There's a few of them. I've tried to look it up before, and like,
here you go. $1.64.
Yeah.
Where? Hold on. What did it kind of peak at?
$1.80 by the looks of it.
Yeah, I mean they're incentivized to try and keep that price up.
Yeah.
But I'm assuming that whole thing's going to die. Like it's a weird one because how much did they raise? Like 200 million or something ridiculous. Yeah. But it's so like I looked at it and thought this is so obviously going to fail. You're not going to get mass usage and acceptance of it.
Yeah.
The orbs themselves are super freaky and weird. This is just obviously a failure.
I saw one once. I was at a mining disrupt, and they weren't even supposed to be there, but one of the guys got in with an orb. And the thing that surprised me about the orb, it's like cheap plastic.
Oh, really?
It's not metal. It's not like this. It's literally like cheap, rinky plastic around a lens. And there's this weird inscription on it. I can't remember what it says. It says something creepy, like on the camera, like around the retina or whatever. There's some slogan.
We're watching.
Maybe he'll find it. But yeah, it's like cheap plastic. It's honestly really junky looking.
So I wanted to destroy one. Yeah. I had this need. We've got these cameras in the UK at the moment called ULEZ cameras, ultra low emission zone.
Yeah, I know about this.
Do you know them all getting vandalized and destroyed?
Yes, I do.
Like a third of them.
I do.
I felt like we needed to do the same with these orbs.
Yeah.
I was thinking, how can I do it? Put glue on the.
A few people did it. I saw some guy throw one into the Hudson River or something.
Oh, did he?
Yeah.
Yes, I saw that video. He ran into the headquarters or something. He ran into one of their offices and stole it and ran out.
Yeah.
Legend.
I love it.
Yeah. Did he get arrested for it?
I'm sure. Something of the kind.
But you are right in that there is we're in the midst of a monetary revolution and a cultural revolution of such. But I do, I recognize it.
Yeah.
But I don't know if it scales across everyone with Bitcoin. In that, what I was trying to figure out was, is there a cultural revolution because the kind of people who've been seeking this cultural revolution, like Bitcoin suits them? Or is it people have found Bitcoin and then it's changed them?
I think both are true.
Yeah.
I think both are true. I think Bitcoin, and I think what happens, and this speaks to the point that I want to say Udi if I get it, if it's somebody else, but there's these voices that have criticize these Bitcoiners, they're into all these unrelated things, this meat stuff, this other stuff. Why do they it's a cult. They keep talking about all these other things. I think that's a really shallow critique. And I think what happens is people come into Bitcoin and they realize, oh my God, everything I believed about money is wrong. And then there's a question, I wonder what else I believe is wrong. And there's suddenly this like new capacity, this new mental capacity that comes online for some people of like, well, I'm going to just like look into this topic for myself and come to my own conclusions. And that doesn't mean that they get it right. And that doesn't mean there's enormous acquiring true knowledge is a hard and arduous process. It takes a lot of work. It can take research. It can take data. It can, or other faculties of, but even if they don't get it right, because I feel like this, like in America, there's been this phrase of like, some people would be like, do your own research. And then other people would be like, no, you can't do your own research. Only the experts, like you're an idiot. Like you can't know. But I think there's something fundamentally valuable about this process of inquiring into something for yourself, regardless of whether you come to the right conclusion or not, as long as you don't stop inquiring. If you like do a week of research, decide this is it, and then completely like shut your mind to it, like, okay, that can be harmful. But I think somebody even making mistakes, even maybe coming to a conclusion they later reject, is just, it's so important because I feel like it's the software of how we avoid, I think, cultural decay, really. It's how we avoid getting into a place in our society where no one's thinking anymore and we're just accepting narratives and conclusions and secondhand stories as truth with no opposition. And I think that's something Bitcoiners do very well. And I think it's also one other thing I'll add, because like, I'm passionate about this topic of Bitcoin culture and what I see in Bitcoin culture. But I think some people listening might think of Bitcoin culture as just like, oh, Bitcoin culture is just like toxic maxis, eating carnivore and yelling at shitcoiners on the internet. And that's what Steven's talking about when he says, that's not my experience of Bitcoin culture. That's a part of Bitcoin culture. But I think especially in recent years, it has broadened to such a tremendous degree to encompass such a wide variety of people, ideas, and ideologies. So when I talk about Bitcoin culture, just to be clear, I'm not talking about that, I think, that narrow slice, but what I experience as like a much broader view of Bitcoiners.
Yeah, and I think different people get attached to different parts of that.
Yes.
So I'm really drawn to the idea of time. Just really, I'm 45 at the end of this month.
Yeah.
I'm drawn to the idea, well, not yet, but I'm drawn to this idea of time because it is scarce.
Yeah.
And I'm drawn to this idea that, people die in their 40s all the time. And more so in their 50s, even more so in their 60s, 70s, but it happens. Like, and you don't know when it's gonna end. But I'm really compelled into it, and I think about time through a Bitcoin lens in a couple of ways. Firstly, financially, when am I set up so I can not work? And secondly,
you do this because you love it.
No, actually, because we talked about it beforehand. Like, I'm approaching. There will come a time in the not too distant future I will have my retirement or Bitcoin retirement. I think you have to.
Yeah.
But I'm constantly thinking about time and how I use time and how I want to use time. So I was saying to Danny beforehand, I used to work in advertising, right? Yeah. Nobody quits advertising. They stay in it forever until they die or until they hit 65 retirement age, some later. And I had an agency, and at its peak, we had 40 staff, we had a £3 million turnover. It was pretty good. But we were definitely thinking, how do we get to 10 million? And we definitely would have thought after that, how do you get to 50 million, so on. He never would have stopped. I don't think like that anymore. With my Bitcoin, I'm like, when does my Bitcoin get me to the point where I can slow down, do less? Still might do the podcast, just might not travel.
That I can understand.
And I don't know, what I can't tell you, Steve, is that just my age?
Yeah.
Yeah, does that happen to everyone? Or is it the money? Because I feel like I own a form of money where I've crossed that certain period of time where every 4 years should mean I should be able to not worry about money again. Like, I should be able to pay for my house, pay for my things, pay for my kids, rather than keep having to feed the feast. So I don't know which it is.
And so I feel like that speaks to almost like a value that is embedded in the Bitcoin community. Like when I relate and I look at the Bitcoin community, I generally find a group of people that like it is not as much concerned with like that previous model you described in advertising. That's just kind of like, we're just going to grow forever and not question it. There's effectively no stopping point. There's not, it's just growth for growth's sake.
Yeah.
And this isn't me demonizing like economies need to grow, you know, et cetera. But I think in Bitcoin, there's an inquiry of like, what is the role of money and what is more important than money? What are the values? What are the things that we have in life that matter to us that like transcend, you know, just money or just our career success? And I think Bitcoiners are concerned with that. I think a lot of them like, and this is the thing, I think Bitcoin is in many ways a means to an end. And you can see this in the phrase like fix the money, fix the world, right? Bitcoiners say this all the time. But like embedded in that phrase, the goal is fixing the world. It's not having Bitcoin at $1 million. People might think that the road to fixing the world is having a different monetary system and that'll fix a lot of the problems. But the thing that Bitcoiners are really after in that statement, and I think in general, is this social, societal change. They're looking at the world we inhabit right now and saying, like, this isn't working right. And there are maybe values I hold that aren't reflected in society, or there's values I didn't hold that have like caused a lot of problems in my life. Like my life has not gone the way I've wanted because I was valuing these other things.
Can you give me examples?
I mean, simple example based on what you said is like someone who just works all the time and never sees their kids and just is on the fiat treadmill. I think that's a simple example. It could also be somebody who like gave all their decision-making authority away to other people in their life, whether those are experts or their family or whoever, but like they didn't think for themselves. They didn't stand in their own two shoes and live their life as ultimately like they wanted to live it, even if maybe that took a little inquiry to figure out what is the life I even want to live. But
I almost think most people don't really get to live the life they want to live.
I would agree with you 100%.
You know, right now.
And most people don't know the life
Yes.
they want to live. It's not even that like they're dreaming of doing this thing and like the system is just preventing them. It's literally like they're not even clear on what that life would be.
So back when I worked in advertising, I would tell you I love my job. I absolutely love my job. I would get up at 5 in the morning or 6 in the morning. I'd get the train to London. I would do it and I'd come back and see my kids before they went to bed, have my dinner and go to bed. And I was convinced I loved my job. But now when people say that, I'm like, do you really love your job? What do you love it more than going down the pubs with your mates? Do you love it more than going on holiday? Do you love it more than having sex with your wife? Do you love it more than hanging out with your kids? Do you love it more than going to the gym? Like, I can list 10 things I think you love more than your job. So why is your job taking up like 80, 90% of your life? And I convinced myself I love my job. I didn't. I knew when I quit, I fucking quit. Yeah. But right now, not entirely, because we're having questions about the future, but I'm definitely living the life I want to live, mostly. I'd say 60, 70% there.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
It's much more than most people ever get.
But Bitcoin arguably did that.
Yeah.
That's what Bitcoin did.
Yeah, that's what Bitcoin did.
Yeah.
We figured it out.
No, but it did it in that it gave me the breathing. It's not that I got to do the podcast. It gave me the financial breathing space. A 4-year cycle, that first tour of duty, it gave me that breathing space.
Yeah.
And now it's like, okay, I can make decisions. And if we have another run over the next few months or a year, it's going to change everything.
Yeah. And there's a way, and I think that's very real, that like having, being financially constrained versus having financial breathing room can allow you the time and space to sit down and reevaluate things, make different choices, like construct the work or, kind of some like external life in some ways that you want. But then there's even this other level, which I think is independent from those more like external concerns of just like, how does one even know? How does one even come upon what they really want in life? What is meaningful for them? What sort of life and what sort of relationships, what sort of people, what sort of values would I honestly would use the phrase like bring themselves into harmony with themselves. I think for most people, we live there's a very divided life where, kind of like you were describing with advertising, people consciously think they want and are satisfied by one thing, but it conflicts with their actual nature, their actual self. But they don't even know where that actual self is located, much less what it thinks.
I think there's two components of it.
Yeah.
One, financial breathing room.
Sure.
Is really
It's critical.
It's
It's
critical.
important. It's important.
Yeah, and because I've seen the opposite recently
Yes.
in Argentina and particularly in
and
Lebanon.
it's devastating.
I mean, there is a brain drain on these countries where the young people are leaving because there is no future, and they have to leave if they can. So I think one is the financial aspect, having that ability to breathe and plan.
Yeah.
You talked about that in the past, with the volatility of these prices. You can't plan in an economic environment. But I think the second thing is the death of ego, which I think some people struggle with in different ways. And that ego could manifest itself in how you want people to see you, versus how, the things that you think are meaningful for your life.
Yeah.
And probably both are just bullshit.
I couldn't agree more. We all get, we all are born and adopt a conditioned sense of self. It's like inevitable, like just being a human. You're raised in a culture, by a family, in a society, and you're taught to want and expected to behave in certain ways. And this forms like a simulated sense of self. You have like ego, I use that kind of just broadly, like you have this almost just like the simulation of you. And, people may live their whole lives just, at the beck and call of this concept, but it's just a kind of an accumulated weight of conditioning. And like, if you're so lucky, something happens in your life that cracks that shell, often tragedy, often hardship. Usually, if everything's going well, you don't question it. It's usually when things are going not so well, and this suddenly interrupts your narrative of yourself. And if you're so lucky, you look into that crack for a second, and it's a moment, a crack in the shell, and it's a moment where you can kind of restructure yourself in hopefully a way which is more authentic, but also like more vitalizing, more like life-giving. Because I just think like, and I just think, this is just one of the tragedies of the world is like so many people living like a simulated life, just a conditioned life. I don't say that to diminish the difficulty in going from A to B, but it's profound.
Well, I then wonder how much the instability of money sets the pace of life. I mean, I can, but I can think back to my childhood. My dad worked so hard, and he instilled these, hard-working values, which I've tried to relay to my children. They don't give us much of a fuck. But in extreme scenarios, like I say, when you go to Argentina, Lebanon, Venezuela, you can see it does set the pace of life. But I wonder how much it sets the pace here. I wonder if I'm like reverse engineering what I've done based on Bitcoin. It's not exactly true. I can never figure it out, and I don't think I can ever know.
Yeah.
But I do fully recognize, like, financial stability gives you breathing room. Breathing room allows you to make better decisions.
Yeah.
I met this guy in Lebanon. It's fucking tragic. He's got two brothers who are both disabled. His dad is deaf. His mum looks after the disabled kids. He earns all the money for the family. He's 19. He's my son's age. And I said, what is it like for you? He said, there's no future. I get up, I go to work, I come home, I sleep every single day. There's no future for me.
Yeah.
There's no fun. And that has come from a country which has gone through hyperinflation, which has had a catastrophic effect on everybody. Not just hyperinflation.
Yeah.
Firstly, they had their money stolen.
Yeah.
And then what was left was hyperinflated away.
Yeah.
It's destroyed the entire fabric of that country. And for him, there is no... He can't sit there and go and think about the culture or
Sure.
what he wants. So yeah, maybe, I don't know, maybe along the extremes, it's entirely true.
It's so, it can be, I think it's kind of Maslow's hierarchy of needs a little bit, whereas what we're talking about is more in like the self-actualization camp. And at this other extreme is just like material security, just literally having enough to eat, having enough, money to live a secure life. And I think it's that having no security, no function, no hope, no ability to plan for the future can, in the vast majority of cases, just be an absolute barrier to that sort of human flourishing that, be wonderful if everybody could experience. But just because you have money also doesn't mean you do that by default. In fact, money can be as much of a barrier in some circumstances. You look at the children of like extreme wealth, like
I'm not talking about wealth.
yeah.
No, I'm talking about stability of money.
Sure.
In that, so in Argentina, when I got there, the biggest surprise of the restaurants were full. And everyone was like, yeah, we just spend the money.
Yeah.
One, it's not worth holding on to. And two,
Yeah.
the future's so bleak, let's just enjoy ourselves. So, but it's like a very slow.
It's like time preference stuff. It's
Yeah.
like ability to
Yeah,
to
but-
feel that there's a tomorrow.
Yeah. So I'm not talking about wealth. I'm talking about the breathing space and knowing that actually I might as well save my money. So in Argentina, there is zero reason to hold on to pesos.
Sure.
Get rid of it as soon as possible. Whether you get dollars or what some people do, they buy bricks.
Bricks.
Okay? Yeah, they buy bricks. So if you're the poorest in Argentina, you buy bricks or you buy roof tiles, you buy building materials. And what happens is once you've got enough, you build a new room on your house. So you literally go around and see these houses. You can see the way they
Just piece
construct
by
them.
piece.
Yeah. And so they hold something, right? But that's the only way they can plan for the future. Whereas we have the breathing space here, especially if Bitcoin does what we think it's going to do, is to go, I've got breathing space. I can leave that money there and it might be volatile for a while, but it's not a slow decline.
Yeah.
Like there's no scenario where if I had £10,000 in my bank, I think 5 to 10 years, if I save that, I'm going to be able to buy more stuff because I'm not.
Sure.
It's going to be worth less stuff. Whereas with Bitcoin, I know 5 to 10 years, probably going to be worth more stuff. So I can save that for the future and plan.
Yeah. No, it's a great point. And like humans need to be able to have this like positive vision of the future. There has to be something in the future which is worth it to you, that you feel like you can either plan for or work towards. And obviously, that can be family, it can be many things. It doesn't have to be money. But like if you chip away at people's anchor to a positive future, it's their sense of hope. Like you chip away at their hope, you chip away at any motivation to better oneself in the moment, in the present. Like I think, and these you can see this play out in different ways in different countries who have different relationships with the future because of stuff like you've said. Like you dismantle that. That relationship to time and savings in the future, and the culture actually changes. Like coming to this topic, like the culture actually gets shifted by the kind of physical realities of that monetary system. And I think it was probably you that shared this. But I had heard the people in Argentina are like, as soon as they get the money, they just they spend it on, even if you're middle class, like even if you're doing okay, well, you just go to nice restaurants, like you were saying, you just go do these things because there's not a savings function. And do that long enough, the whole culture changes. I mean, do that long enough, and suddenly this isn't like an economically rational decision of okay, this is going to inflate, I'm going to go do this. It's just an embedded way of operating. And I think it's just a great example of how the mechanics and the structure of a monetary system or technology then come back and shape human culture. which we get stuck in.
I think going right back to the start, that's probably why I would take the opposite side of the bet on shitcoins dying. Because I think we're just getting more and more nihilistic, and then eventually everything becomes a lottery ticket. So why not just throw it all into fucking poop coin or whatever? I don't know.
What's your language, man? Danny doesn't normally swear.
I always swear.
Not like that.
The nihilism, I mean, I think it's one of the most dangerous forces in the world right now. I really do believe that. It's up there at least. It's one of the things that actually draws me to Bitcoiners and Bitcoin culture is they're not nihilistic. Say what you will about Bitcoiners, but you 100%. Cannot say they are nihilistic. They think the world matters, that things have meaning, that there are things worth fighting for. And that is such a breath of fresh air in this culture that has been so deconstructed, that has had all of the meaning, I would actually say like analyzed out of it. It is like a death by analysis in some ways. And like then there's like hopelessness and groups that just feel like they don't have a future. But even in elite circles, even in like well-off circles, there's been a deconstruction of meaning, that is, I think it's both like wrong and incorrect, and just so detrimental to civilization, to society. Like we need meaning, and like you're not a smart and clever person because you can come up with some complicated way to what really is meaning? What really is love? Isn't it just brain chemicals sloshing around your brain? And how does anything even mean anything? And is reality even real? Like that doesn't make you you're not intelligent because you can come up with those ideas. Like you're actually missing what's right in front of your face.
And that way of thinking is a one-way ticket to the VR headset and living in a pod.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, and that societal decay has become more evident. I think especially in, I would say, the US and the UK.
Yeah, 100%.
We're kind of we're following behind. I think we're a couple of years behind. But I think one of the great examples of these, there's a name for it, but these groups who just run into a shop, steal everything and run out. Yeah, there is no fear of the consequences.
Yeah.
I mean, God, I remember stealing a Kinder Egg when I was a kid and I shit myself. But they'll run into a store and steal iPhones or Gucci handbags and there's no fear of the consequences. Yeah. But also it's a group of people I'm thinking, what's going on in your life? Like, have you got a job? You got ambition? You got role models? You got leadership? Like, how have you got to this point where like you're just okay with that?
Yeah.
I had so much fear of getting in trouble as a kid. I did stupid shit, but nothing like that. And so you see that. I think you've seen a breakdown in governance. I mean, what's her name? Dianne Feinstein just died. She was a career politician on $200,000 a year, retired. Is it $103 million and a $60 million private jet?
Yeah.
We know how much money Elizabeth Warren's worth.
Yeah.
Nancy Pelosi is very rich, so we've got complete lack of faith in government and politicians. Companies to some extent, you find out some of the shitty polluting things that some companies do, or it's just, I don't know, I just feel like everywhere. It was funny, I was talking, let me give you the reverse, the hope on this. I keep using this term at the moment, that Bitcoin's a cheat code.
Yeah.
And I talk about it as a cheat code for my football team. In that, because we became the Bitcoin football team, you were aware of them. Stephen, I don't even know if you like our football, but you're aware of them. And you probably see me post the results. And you're like,
absolutely.
Cool. And all these Bitcoiners around the world.
And you guys are crushing it. We're having a very, very good season across both the teams.
Yes.
Yeah. And I know that because of Bitcoin.
Because of Bitcoin, but you wouldn't have fucking cared otherwise. And there's people around the world who care, and that's given us a leg up, and it's a cheat code. And so people keep writing to me now. I've had like about 10 emails saying, oh, I do X, how do I use the Bitcoin cheat code? Yeah. So one of them was a plumber. This is the perfect example. He wrote to me, and I've had a complicated relationship with various tradesmen at different times because I don't know who I trust. Sometimes they're good, sometimes they're crap. You can't trust online reviews because usually they're friends. But anyway, this plumber messaged me and said, how do I integrate the Bitcoin cheat code into me as a plumber? I said, well, you're the Bitcoin plumber. That's who you are. Your Twitter handle's the Bitcoin Plumber. On your website, you say, you accept Bitcoin, and I immediately go, I think I trust you a bit more. I don't know why. It's the culture, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
I think majority of things on life, I'm on the same page as you, right?
Yeah.
So when you come to me, I know I'm going to have a conversation with you about Bitcoin. You're going to come. I think you're going to do a diligent job, and if I've got a problem, I can talk to you about it.
Well, it's in a sense, it's like a religion in that way, and
Cult.
people will criticize.
We're a cult.
It's a religion. I say,
Shared values.
Exactly. All the best parts. It really is. Like if you're like a Jew in New York City and you walk down the street, you'll be, you should go to this restaurant. It's run by someone from the synagogue. You should go here. You should meet him. It's a community function. I'm sure it's the same thing for Christians and for whoever else. It's like, you're part of this group that has shared values. And so when you enter into a community, it's like, you've got to go here. Tell him I sent you. They'll treat you great. You're going to, this restaurant, this place, this thing. And I've noticed literally the same thing with Bitcoin. I was in Miami for the Bitcoin conference. I was walking down the street. Someone I'd never met in real life walked up to me, knew who I was, told me, you should go down here. You should go to this restaurant. It's run by a Bitcoiner. Tell him I sent. It's the same exact thing. And so it has those qualities. And that's one reason the more I look at it, like the astonishing thing to me is this community that has grown around it. And like that is not the case in crypto, like at all. Like the same dynamic just does not exist. And so it like it leads me to ask the question, like it's like Bitcoin has been this like shelling point, this coordination for people that has just brought in all of these amazing people. I mean, I think they're amazing. I think they're awesome to work in and around this thing. And it's like, even if Bitcoin failed, I don't think Bitcoin will fail, but even if Bitcoin failed, I think this group of people will still do something incredible. I think the network of people which has been built is so valuable, and I've benefited so much from it. Like it's been so instrumental to me. I feel very grateful. And if I ask myself, like, what am I the most grateful for of my time in Bitcoin? And the answer is not money I made or sats I stacked or like whatever. It's the people I met. And I don't say that to be cliche, and I don't say that to be like corny. It's literally the answer. And I benefited so much. Like I got into Bitcoin when I was in my like early to mid 20s. And those people were so instrumental to my development, my intellectual development. They exposed me to new ideas and ways of thinking. And like it was just astonishingly important. And
we sound like nutters to the outside.
I was going to say, that's such a bear market answer. It's the friends we met along the way.
It's the friends we met along the way.
Like Danny's like a friend for life now. This Bitcoin thing could end. By the way, I'm going to take issue with if Bitcoin fails. Bitcoin can't fail, but let me finish what I'm saying. Because it already succeeded.
Yeah.
It could end.
Yeah.
But it already,
Sure.
Like a failure means it never achieved something.
I agree.
And it has achieved so much.
So much.
Yeah, it's so many different things. But I'm not sure. I think if it did end, I'm not sure if a group of people would. I think maybe like me and Danny will we'll do a football podcast.
You do something else?
Yeah. Or something else, yeah.
Have you guys ever seen the documentary Jodorowsky's Dune?
No.
Okay,
No.
so it's phenomenal. So everyone knows what Dune is now,
Yeah.
right? There was the big movie. Like before, people didn't know
And
what
I've
it
seen
was.
the original Dune.
You've seen it? Okay,
Yeah.
yeah. You have taste.
No, I'm old.
Yeah.
No, I'm old.
Dune's awesome.
Who's the main guy in that?
What, in the original?
Yeah, the main actor. I'm so bad with names. No, not him. Oh, don't worry about it.
Jodorowsky's Dune. So Jodorowsky is this Chilean filmmaker, very surrealist. And 10, 20 years ago, he starts trying to make Dune, the movie. And he assembles this fantastic, like Mick Jagger, Salvador Dali, like all of these incredibly well-known people, like these Mobius from Mobius Comics, and these artists and these writers, and this like all-star group, not just of actors, but of everybody. And they storyboard the movie and they create this whole thing, and it's just incredible. And there's a whole documentary about it. But ultimately what happens is the studio kills the film. And so the film never gets made. It
Oh,
never
no,
actually.
no, it's not that. No, I was thinking because there is an original Dune that did get
This
made.
did not get made. This is a different. No,
okay.
this is a different director.
Okay.
That was like Peter Lynch or
Yeah.
somebody. This is a different director. This never got made. He puts together this incredible group of people. The movie gets killed. And this group of people goes on to influence almost every Star Wars, Alien, Blade Runner. The same people that were on his team take the stuff they learned from that and go and make all the great movies of that era. They influence sci-fi, they influence culture. And again, I think Bitcoin succeeds and doesn't. I think it doesn't end. I think Bitcoin will be very successful. But at this point, like I think of it like that. Like Bitcoin has assembled this crew of people that no matter what happens, they're going to change the world. They're going to influence things. They're going to do things. And I feel very like confident in that prediction.
So you're a film guy.
I like movies. Yeah, I like film.
Do you have a favorite film?
Do I have a favorite film?
Do you have a film you recommend? If I was like, look, me and Danny have got nothing to do tonight, what film should we watch?
Well, you should watch Jodorowsky's Dune. Actually.
Okay, that's
I mean, I like that's up there. It's a bit of a documentary. It's utterly incredible.
Now you've blanked me. I was going to tell you. Well, anyway, a film I always recommend is Shotgun Stories. I love
never
that.
heard of it.
Yeah, I love that as a film. Yeah, look, listen, I think it is a really interesting group of people. I think it's, but I also think perhaps, I think all of the people, the majority of the people in Bitcoin now, like, I think they're predisposed to it. They were, like Danny, what were you saying to me this morning? You weren't into school or...
Oh yeah, not at all. Like it was like there was a time in my life where like, you know, early 20s, my friends were leaving university. I was like working in a recording studio and that kind of thing. And they were going off to work at places like Deloitte and those like corporate jobs. And like it couldn't have interested me less. I despise the idea of having that as my life. And so I think like if anyone was going to get Bitcoin out of my group of friends, it was going to be me.
Yeah.
So I do feel like I think most Bitcoiners that we have, at least now, probably share at least some part of that story.
100%. I was a weirdo too.
Yeah.
I mean, I was, you know.
We are the weirdos.
We are the weirdos.
Outcasts. We're the outcasts. Like I was into punk rock,
Yeah.
metal, and I didn't give a shit about the establishment. That'll surprise some people. But I was a weirdo. Like,
Absolutely.
And I think we are the weirdos. And I just wonder if the difficult thing now, the crossing the chasm moment, is getting out of the weirdos into the normies, because there's a lot out there and they're not, for some reason, they're not buying into every narrative we put in front of them. They're being exposed to the same inflationary pressures, corporate bullshit, governance bullshit, mass media lies. They're being exposed to exactly the same, and we're going, here's a tool.
Yeah.
You don't even have to buy it, just learn about it, and they're still not biting. And so that to me is like, that's the crossing the chasm point. How do we get to those? I don't know the answer.
That's you're right. Like, yeah, I don't know the answer either, but you're correct in identifying the challenge and like the issue. Like that is what we need to do. And like I think something we need to recognize is that like, it's like the first stage of Bitcoin content and Bitcoin writing and ideas and dialogue. It was kind of like communicating for the people who were going to get it easily, who were going to hear it. Like it was Bitcoin content for Bitcoiners. Maybe just some of those Bitcoiners didn't know they were Bitcoiners yet.
Yeah.
But now we need Bitcoin content for non-Bitcoiners and for people who may never be Bitcoiners in the sense that we think of Bitcoiners, like coming back to this cultural identity. We need to figure out how to communicate a message and that is appealing to people that don't share the same like ideological, motivation and this passion that Bitcoiners have, like that just want to live a normal life and like be secure and, not have their life be disrupted and maimed. Because it's a different message there.
Maimed.
Yeah.
That's a strong term there, but you're right.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look at
No, you're right.
Look at the state of the average, if you're not, if you don't come from money or aren't of above average intelligence or don't live in a stable country or there's a long list of prerequisites that like most aren't even in your control that you need to have, I think, to flourish in today's world. And some of that, I think, is a lot of what we talked about of just the society and the economics and everything. But I think there's a larger issue too, at least in Western countries, at least in like developed countries, where like even if you have you're, intelligent, you have a good career, you have resources, like you're, not like disproportionately deeply traumatized or something, like you got dealt a good hand. There's still, I think our culture and our society is failing us in critical ways, and not the ways that I think most people would say when they go on this spiel. There's a lot of people that have a lot of thoughts about that. I actually think, and like this is part of why I post the stuff I do of like sunlight and walking and such, in that I think our society is in many ways like fundamentally not aligned with our biology, actually. I think we have like a very unforgiving demand that is placed on us just from the nature of the system, right? Like, I mean, millions and millions and millions of years of evolution with certain realities. And then, in, a couple hundred years, we industrialize and everything changes. And I think there's a mismatch. There's a mismatch between what our culture and our society is incentivized to have us do, which is effectively like work in a box for 40 hours sitting in a chair under fluorescent lights, and driving and stress and traffic and bad food and all these things. Like
for some, being awake all night.
Yeah, night shifts, all these things. Like there's that's good for the system. That's good for the economy. That is like, it's almost like a machine optimizing itself. But that is not good for the human being. Mm-hmm. But there's a challenge. There's a real challenge there. And it's one that like, I'm not somebody that's just going to say like, oh yeah, we just need to like return to the land. We just need to like, just like go back and like be farmers. Because that doesn't work. Like there's two reasons it doesn't work. Like one is it's a bit silly to make that claim, because if you go to actual agrarian subsistence farming countries, those people are trying to get the fuck out and go to cities. So there's like a revealed preference there that most people that have to live that life don't want to live that life because, well, it's easier in many ways. And so we can't ignore that when having this conversation. But also two is just like, there's just not enough land. There's not enough resources for 7 billion people to live in small agrarian communities. Like that era has passed us by. So we can't just like go back. We can't just like return. But there's also something deeply non-functional about the current structure of material society. And I think like the road forward, I don't have the answers, but it's like, how do we build society? How do we build our buildings, our jobs, our workplaces, our food that respects and works with those evolutionary demands, those things that like you just can't escape? Like, for example, like no one is healthier sitting on the couch for 40 hours a week rather than walking. Like that's just like, it's just a reality. Your body doesn't care. Like it's not happy. It's used to a certain level of movement. And if you just go completely sedentary, like you don't get those inputs, things start deteriorating. So how do we actually have a culture which like works with that instead of asking people to sacrifice their health in the pursuit of what is it, effectively GDP growth? I don't know the answer.
I don't know if there is an answer.
No.
I think perhaps this is just part of the journey of humans. This is a phase we're going through.
It may be.
And we will enter another phase, which I'm starting to realize that the kind of robotics AI world it's not just a fantasy, what people are talking about. It's not just in the movie. It is coming and it's happening. Yeah. Like I'm totally seeing how it's impacting the world.
Yeah.
I'm using it. I'm seeing the changes. And I mean, how long have we really been talking about AI? Less than a year?
Yeah,
like mass talking about it?
It's going very fast. It's progressing very fast.
Yeah, it's really, really fast. And I'm seeing how like companies are using it. What was the thing the other day? God, I saw something the other day and that was a real kind of moment for me. Oh, Spotify. You seen their AI announcement?
No.
Oh my God. We'll show you the video in a bit. So they've done AI translations. So essentially, we'll be able to upload our podcast, whatever language you speak, it will be translated in your language.
That's huge. That's huge.
But in my voice.
Yeah.
And so you can watch it.
Yeah, I've seen a bit of this.
This is insane to me.
It's not even just that, like, it changes your
lips.
lip
You look
movement.
like you're speaking it.
Yeah, it's insane. And so that makes us more productive.
Yep.
That probably makes our show more popular. But that presents a challenge maybe to some of the podcasts that exist in those local languages. People might go to ours because it's a bit...
They have to compete with you now.
Yeah, and so that's a whole different scenario. Yeah. But there are tens of thousands, millions of things that AI is going to do. And I am undecided whether it's going to make the world a better or a worse place. I think it's a bit of both.
Sure.
But
everything is.
But are we going to move to a point where the wealth is concentrated into less and less people because of who controls the AI? Or is this going to make us into a more productive, efficient society? So we have to work. I don't know.
I think the really cool thing on the AI stuff is how big sort of self-hosted AI is getting already.
Yeah.
Like, did you see the Google memo where he basically said, this was quite a few months ago, but they said we've got no moat and neither does OpenAI.
Yeah.
So like, and the things like Llama, is it Llama GPT? Like these are like self-hosted AI models that work pretty much just as well.
So they're not going to be able to regulate it.
Well, hopefully not. But like the genie's out the bottle. There's nothing. There's nothing you can do about it now.
bottle.
And I think it'll change everything. But maybe we get like a new renaissance.
So we've had less than a year. I've been making this podcast for 6 years. Where are we in another 6 years?
Yeah, exactly.
Do we even need to make it? Do we just say, Stephen, these are our questions, and just a robot makes the whole thing? I fucking don't know.
Yeah. I think no, and that's your point of like, so. I think this phase of human civilization was inevitable. There was no way we were going to go from, medieval Renaissance to modern world without passing through, industrialization and these sort of structures and everything. And so it's a phase. It was always going to be like that. But as with any phase, someone still has to do the work to leave that phase. Someone still humans still need to discuss, well, what are the ideas? What is the DNA of the next phase? And I think about this because, for me personally, I'm very fortunate, right? I've optimized my life in such a way to work with these pressures, right? I'm outside all day. I'm in the sun constantly. I walk constantly. But that works for me because I'm very fortunate and I can my life works in that way. I have a remote job and X, Y, and Z and a certain sort of remote job where most of my job is taking phone calls, not writing code on a computer. And so I recognize that that's been my personal attempt to try to thread this needle and harmonize these tensions. But everyone can't do that. That's an impossibility given just what people need to do. If you have to work at Target, if you have to or you're in a different country or whatever, right? There's just tensions. But the thing that let me live a life, which is simultaneously modern, but also not so bound in these tensions, was technology. Actually, technology was what freed me up enough to do it. And so, I think one of the most credible theses is maybe AI, maybe robotics, maybe these things change the workplace, change the methods of production, the means by which our civilization functions, that people start to have more freedom to design new living spaces and workspaces and, the structure of cities. And I think that's very credible, and maybe it's that and maybe it's something else. But much like the conversation with Bitcoiners, what is important to me is the inquiry. What is important to me is asking the questions and drilling into this, which is what I always see, Bitcoiners to do. It's not that I think Bitcoiners don't agree on cultural issues. There's not a consensus. It's not everybody is oh yeah, eat meats, going back to the farm. No, there's huge, some people completely did. Some people are vegans. A lot of Bitcoin devs are vegans. There's not this consensus. But what I think is shared and what is common is that most people are asking these questions in their own way, coming to different conclusions, but they're asking the question. And that's the thing that is, I think, life-giving. That's the thing that's important. And I think it's in this situation as well of just as we contemplate this what may be a phase transition in industrial society, what are the questions we need to be asking? That's what's important to me.
Well, Stephen, I think that's a great place to end it on. And listen, we'll have a week of culture here in LA, Bitcoin culture.
Yeah.
Some good food, some good talks. I'm really excited to get to the conference and see it. And I love every time you come on this podcast. So I appreciate you, man. You want to send anyone anywhere? Has Corey sent you with a message?
I don't know. Corey did not send me with a message this time. Looking forward to this week, Pacific Bitcoin. If you're not here, think about checking it out next year. Again, Stephen with Swan Bitcoin. I run the private client team. We do, I think, the best concierge service in the industry. So if you're someone that wants someone to walk alongside you and hold your hand in your Bitcoin process, that's what we do. We're on the phone, one-on-one with clients all day. So pleasure coming on.
Love it, man. All right. See you later in the week, man. Thank you. Cheers.
Bye.